Hello and welcome back to the Career Cravings podcast. Today, our guest is Jay Kiew. He is an inspiring keynote speaker, the CEO and author of best-selling book, Change Fluency, and his career is so incredible. He has spent over 15 years at top organizations like Deloitte, TELUS, ADP, and now he's leading innovation and is the leading expert in Change Fluency. So I got to dig in and ask him some questions about where he sees the future of work going, how AI is disrupting careers, and what we can actually tactically do about that. So I can't wait for you to dive in and hear this conversation. Hey, it's Irina Pozan, and welcome back to the Career Cravings podcast. This podcast has a simple mission. It's to help ambitious professionals like you build the career and life that you've been craving. Over the past 15 years, I've worked as an HR leader, designed hiring systems, led recruitment teams, and I've sat on the other side of the hiring table. I've seen what works in today's job market, what doesn't, and what separates those good candidates from the ones that actually land their dream roles. Now I'm bringing everything I've learned straight to you. Each episode is packed with actionable insights and tools to help you land your dream role sooner. Now let's dive in. Hi, Jay Kiew. I'm super excited to connect and have you here on the Career Cravings podcast today. And as the leading expert in Change Fluency, I just want to pick your brain on all things AI, change, especially as they relate to someone's career.
Oh my goodness. So glad to be here and excited to dig in.
Okay. So one of the things that I've heard you say that really resonated with me is that our limits don't hold us back. They set us free. I'd love to hear your perspective on what that meant and how your personal story of being a cancer survivor has shaped that belief.
Yeah, gosh, wow. Starting with the big questions. I love it. What does it mean that our limits set us free? Well, I believe that we need to leverage our limits, and we all have them, professionally, personally, you name it. Whether it's time, capacity, money, resources, mental capacity, you name it. I found that as a cancer survivor, I'm half blind in one eye. I always used to think that was a really strong limitation for me that held me back, right? I couldn't do the same things that a lot of my friends did, whether it was play hockey, because what if I lost the other eye? Or, play squash. One of the things being half blind is that leads me to not have any depth perception. And so there's this whole question of not telling people about the limitations because I thought that was a weakness. But the older I got, the more maybe I just cared less. The more I started sharing about why I couldn't make it to a meeting, right? Maybe I had a medical checkup or something like that. It didn't lower my status with anybody at all. And in fact, it deepened the relationship with the people that I was trying to connect with in the first place. And so by sharing my limitations, by being open about that, it led to deeper connection quicker. It accelerated it. So leveraging your limits, that's one example on the personal front, but I believe it actually applies to everything.
Tell me how that would also apply organizationally.
Oh, wow. Yeah. There's this great example of Costco. Costco is probably one of the world's leading consumer packaged retail brands, right? Kirkland Signature is actually the most valuable one when it comes to selling the most amounts of toilet paper. And Costco does a really good job of leveraging its limits. Every organization, right, has limits around spending and budgets, headcount, you name it. And what Costco does is it chooses very intentional decisions of what limitations it's going to place on the business to help it run even better. What does that look like? It limits profit. So it limits its profit margins to 15%. Are you a Costco member, by the way?
I am, yes. I will say it kind of freaks me out knowing how busy they often are. So I don't go as often as I like. But now it's like we have the Costco delivery service, which I find freaking amazing because you can get all the things that you really want without going in there, seeing too much, buying too much from being there physically, and then also avoiding all the crowds. So I'm back.
You're back. You're back in a different way, but you're still a Kirkland fan. And one of the reasons, why Costco has so much of our wallet share is because, it limits profit margins, right? If it makes anything more than 15% on any of the products it sells to you, toilet paper, cucumbers, anything, it actually passes those savings on to you.
Mm.
As a result, we feel like we're getting the best value. One other way that it chooses to place a limitation, and this is one of the most strategic limits that it places on itself, is SKU count. You shop online, it sounds like, and so Walmart, Amazon has millions of products available that you could purchase right now. So does Walmart. Amazon only has 3,000. They only have 3,000 unique SKUs that you can purchase from, and as a result, SKU count drives the strategic conversation around what are the best products. If we only have 3,000, what are the absolute best products that we're going to offer our customers? And so that's a really good example at the organizational level of how do we leverage our limits? We place them on ourselves so that we can execute better.
I love that. I feel like, especially as someone who runs a small business, like I can definitely relate from a different perspective of like, there are only so many hours in a day. And the focus on, only offering one program or only serving one type of customer and focusing more deeply on that to have the best results is even more important at my level, I think. And it's also something that makes Costco what they are as well. So I find that really interesting.
Totally. It applies to literally everything, and definitely love how you're translating that for, running a small business. And you could apply that to for the podcast. How do we pursue something that's really intentional within our careers too? So leveraging limits, definitely a superpower.
I love that. And what you said on the personal level with your cancer story and just being more vulnerable and sharing that, I can really, really relate to that. And I also, throughout my life, there were certain things that I just wasn't comfortable sharing. And I felt like I wasn't being my authentic self. And cancer was one of those things as well. And after my diagnosis, I actually didn't want to tell anyone. I actually asked my husband not even to share with my family until I was ready. Like, there was so much that I just didn't want to be seen as a victim, and I didn't share it. And then when I launched this podcast a year ago, one of my goals was to be fully authentic and to really lean into that. And now going through the book process, like as well, I really leaned into telling my story more. And the more I did that, that was all of the feedback that I got that made the podcast successful. And people were like, I can really relate with that. I can resonate with that. And I feel like the more we let people in, especially as we're going to talk about transformation and AI and how things are changing. I think the more we can lean into our own authenticity and share our story, the more that will translate to, what we're looking to achieve.
Totally. Couldn't agree more.
So Jay, you've worked at some incredible organizations like ADP and Deloitte. I'm curious how your definition of success has evolved throughout your career and the change associated with you taking on this current role as CEO of Change Fluency and being an author and speaker. I'm curious how your definition of career success has evolved and what triggered that for you.
Oh my gosh, it's constantly evolving, and and it's never status quo, right? For listeners, I started in B2B sales, the enterprise level, actually in door-to-door sales first when I was in college, and then headed into B2B sales, and found myself in a unique space at ADP where I was helping American companies expand internationally. And as I was doing that, I found a niche specifically there where I started to wonder, oh my gosh, I'm really a category of one here where I'm the only one doing this. And I saw a need in the market where I created, even though my title was at the time B2B sales rep, pretty soon I was working with about 4,000 HR business partners across America because I was the only one who took the time to read the Canadian income tax code and to find out what the benefits are of heading into Canada for an American company. Right. And so as I did that, more and more people leaned into me, and I became really curious. That led me to become curious about how do companies decide to move to a new geography in the first place. And so I was like, what kind of job does that? And it was management consulting. So I went to Ivy Business School to get my MBA, came out a brand spanking new consultant. I was back in 2017, 2018, and really pushed myself to navigate and upskill as much as I possibly could. And that's a theme, I think, for anyone nowadays, is the constant push, self-driven mostly for myself, to learn and to absorb new things. And so once I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of one domain, let's not stay stagnant there. How do we push ourselves to continue exploring? Before I keep going, anything that sticks out to you or anything you're curious or want to dig into about that?
So I see, like, it sounds like such a fluid change to go from, the sales side to then leading a huge change of geography wise, like going into a new country and then working with HR on that. You were in corporate roles for 15 years. And I'm curious what led you to the point of maybe that career ladder no longer being the thing that you're focused on today, and what triggered that change? Because that's a huge change to go from like corporate roles and investing over a decade in that to what your mission is today.
Yeah, there was always like, I don't know, maybe you have this too, but like I always had the gaps, right? Where for a while, management consulting felt like a gap where it was like, oh, I want that, but I can't have it. So I did all the things that got me there. And then after a few years of being in consulting, I absolutely loved it, by the way. A lot of people poo-poo on consulting, but I think it's one of the most beautiful professions in the world because it's structured problem solving. I did that at an organizational level, so doing a lot of massive organizational transformations. And at some point, because I was more on the human capital side of things, another gap started to show up for me. And that was, it would be really cool to do enterprise strategy. What would that look like at a massive organizational scale? And that led me to TELUS, where I ended up in their strategy office and then eventually took over leading strategy for TELUS Health's virtual care arm for a little bit. And the whole time I was shifting into new roles, I was also shifting functions because the more I learned, the more I pushed myself to get out of that comfort zone. But I found myself in this space where, eventually I was like, I've checked off to answer your question, I checked off all the boxes that I wanted to. If I buy and sell a few more companies and merge and acquire a few more companies, like, all right, like I could keep doing this. Don't get me wrong. I could keep doing this for like 25, 30 years. And I couldn't help but wonder, was that it?
Yes.
Right around the same time, the work was evolving really quickly. And clients had started to ask me from the past, they said, hey, you're not really doing the advisory thing anymore, but we really love your advice. And so would you like to partner on a few small projects? Very quickly, that income replaced my full-time salary way quicker than I ever expected. And my wife and I looked at each other and we thought to ourselves, hey, we don't have kids this time. If there's ever a point where we jump ship and just see what we're capable of, now's the time. So we jumped ship and started my first company, the Citizen Centric, which is a leadership development training company, and never looked back since. It's been about 5-6 years now. And then the Change Fluency is a whole nother thing, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
Okay, I love that. And I didn't know that your first company was leadership development. That makes total sense. I love what you said about identifying the gap and seeing something that you haven't done before. And I think that goes so well with what you said earlier about always learning, right? And that being the thing that was driving you, and it was self-directed, which is amazing. I know a lot of people are afraid of change. And, hearing the fact that you were a consultant, which is an incredible career, and worked at these top organizations where you were obviously very comfortable, and you could have stayed the next 25, 30 years, to your point. But instead, you decided to take a risk. I guess it wasn't that much of a risk since you already replaced your corporate income. But a lot of people I find have the desire to do that, but are so afraid of change, right? And leaving what they know behind. What would you say to someone? I know you know the change really well. What would you say sets someone apart that leans into that change and is okay with pursuing it versus those that aren't?
It all comes down to this very simple statement, and that's this. It's either the belief that change happens to you or the belief that change happens through you. That's it, right? Like, do I think that everything that's happening is just happening to me, and if layoffs come, that's going to happen to me, or if AI comes and replaces my job, that's going to happen to me, or the change happens through us point is, wait a minute, what do I have the capability to learn, apply, grow into? What am I doing that can set me apart from everyone else? Or lead me down a path of curiosity and passion and, curating more of my hobbies and interests. I think it's that differentiation.
I love that because it's inevitable. Change is going to happen, and it's what we want to do with it. Do we want to deal with it proactively like you're describing, right? I've heard you also talk about being the creator of value or a consumer of change. Is that similar, or how would you describe those two things?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, you saw that clip. I was sitting in that. I was like, is this too harsh? Because, I had shared this moment where my daughter, who's 3 years old, had been watching a lot of K-pop Demon Hunters, and we were consuming a lot of content, right, on Netflix and YouTube and all this stuff. And this was during the holidays. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, we could continue doing this. And, maybe Maddie starts to go brain dead after a while and just zones out, how toddlers can be. Or what if we change this into something new? So I squatted down and I said, hey, there's this AI video generation app called Sora 2. Maddie, what would it look like if we created a video of you, me, and mommy and our dog and your sister in Sora 2 in the form of K-pop Demon Hunters? Would you like to do that? And she's like, yeah, sure. And so she guided it through the prompts. A few seconds later, a short video that she's created pops out. And in that moment, she's shifted from being a consumer of content to a creator of content. And I can't help but wonder, as we sit in our jobs, in our roles, in our organizations, are we part of the consumption machine where it's like, oh, here's the job and I just do it and I execute it? Or are we creating value that's net new, that steps us outside of our job titles and descriptions, that's adding value to the organization, wherever we are? So that was the context for that statement. Mm-hmm.
I think that next generation, like your daughter, my son, he's 8, I feel like they're just a lot more comfortable with change and technology and all of the things that are happening where, I will be first to admit, I don't love change. I'm not one of those that's like early, adopters. I'm like, yes, let's do it. It takes me a lot of thought and consideration to think about, is this something I want to jump on board with and consider all of the impacts and all of those things? I'd love to hear from your perspective. If someone wants to stay relevant for the next 10 years, what should they be thinking about today, building skill-wise in terms of their career?
So context, as listeners hear this, we're sitting here today, it's February 18th, 2026, and the last month in agentic AI has been absolutely bonkers. OpenClaw launches, which is an open source AI platform where it can take control of your laptop and start to do actions on your behalf. That blows up in January, right? The whole world goes crazy. So much to the point where OpenAI, the founders of ChatGPT, hire Peter, who's the founder of OpenClaw. And they're like, hey, you know what? Like, this is the new thing. You clearly have a vision that works. We're going to bring you in. And so this battle for it is showing people what AI agents are actually capable of or will be capable of in the future. To give you an idea, I'm walking my dog yesterday and I'm like, oh, shoot, I forgot that it was Family Day 2 days ago. Like, I had no idea coming up to this. And I'm sitting in this space and I was like, well, how do I avoid this for the rest of the year? Because clearly my calendar isn't updated. So I have an AI assistant. I actually message it via Lindy, sort of via iMessage. I don't know if you have an iPhone or anything like that.
I do, but I didn't know that I could do that. That sounds awesome. Okay, what did you say?
So I'm pulling it up right now, and this is the text message. This is how I talk to my AI assistant. And all I say is, hey, can you quickly search up the stat holidays for British Columbia for 2026? And what I want you to do is I want you to, for each stat hall, just send me and Teresa an invite from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time to our emails. And literally within like 5 seconds, the invites were in my calendar and it says, all right, done. And I'm in the middle of a walk with my dog. And the level of productivity that's leading to, This is one micro example.
It's interesting. My husband and I were talking about this as well. And he went through, his company was a SaaS company, his last organization, and they went through an exit and sold the organization. But he looks back now and it hasn't been that long. It's been like 1 year. Mm-hmm. But he's like, I can build that whole company that was like 300 people that sold for $1 billion Canadian dollars. He's like, I can build that in like a month with like one agent probably today. And he's like, what does that mean for so many organizations? It's just things are changing so quickly. And I'm so curious on your perspective of the future of work. I know everyone's talking about this, and there's so many extreme perspectives. We're already seeing layoffs. I mean, we've been seeing them for years. That's not new. But now with what you're speaking about in terms of AI and how hard it is to predict where we'll be next month or, 6 months down the line, what do you see coming down the pipeline in terms of how this will affect the future of work and careers?
Oof. I wish it wasn't February 18th, 2026 and you weren't asking me this today because I'll give you the honest answer. And I know, as thought leaders, we're supposed to be positive. I'll give you the real answer. Is that okay?
I would love that.
Because I feel like that it's more appropriate given what we're actually seeing in the market. Because I do think that we can see like at least 3 to 18 months in advance. I think we'll see what's going to unfold. And this is on the heels, for context for listeners, of the SaaS apocalypse. To your point about your husband running a SaaS company, over the last week, Salesforce has dropped like 30%, along with a large percentage of the S&P 500. They've all tanked because everyone's like, well, wait a minute, with OpenClaw, we could build most of this. We don't necessarily need to be paying our HubSpots and our Salesforces and our whatever you use. I spend a lot of money on technical debt, by the way, but all the platforms. A lot of people are seeing the future of like, well, wait a minute. If I have an assistant who can understand my data and work with my data and update it, what would that mean? And so I want to anchor this in what you can do. I think we're going to have a lot of disruption. The layoffs will continue.
Yes.
On a negative front. But on a positive front, never has there been more opportunity for any singular person to create massive amounts of value.
So it's like, yes, there's an opportunity. Layoffs will continue to happen. Our careers will be impacted in different ways. And change will happen to us, like we were talking about, whether we're looking for it to happen to us or not. So how do we prepare for that?
2 things. Number 1, realize the insight is that innovation takes time. Meaning like for me to learn things, for me to spend it, there is the real learning curve that's required. And what the takeaway, so the second thing, the so what, is spend 1 hour a day playing with what you see on Instagram are the latest tools and technologies. Because you're going to see them, right? Like there's so many Instagram accounts that are like, here's the latest update. And it's moving really, really quickly. Just last week, they recreated the Stranger Things finale because nobody liked it. And so they're like, hey, here's how we see it. And it looks like it was a Netflix production. Like the level of quality was insane. And so that takes time to learn though. The quality didn't just show up. So someone didn't just say, hey, I want to make a Stranger Things episode and blah, like here's the alternate ending. The person who created the alternate ending actually has the skill set to artistically identify what the shots are going to look like. They're playing consistently with the latest in technology. And so the one recommendation would be play around with Claude like every single day. See how far you can push it, because the ones who do are going to be leading by leaps and bounds, and the ones who aren't are actually going to be left behind.
Yes, I completely agree. My sister is 12 years younger than me, so she's like a different generation. And a lot of her friends, and they're talking about, trying not to use AI because, there's an environmental impact and, the trees that are being killed and so on. And I was talking to her and I'm like, you're going to need to know how to work with AI or you'll be replaced by it. Because I don't believe that we will all be replaced by AI. I don't think that is where things are going, but we will need to know a completely different new skill set, to your point. And it's that daily learning and keeping up with things that are happening and how we can use it, because there is so much opportunity that this is creating.
Yeah. Can I dig into that with one very specific example? In August 2025, Salesforce lays off half of its customer support agents.
Yes.
4,000 out of 9,000-ish, right? Roughly. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, Mark's terrible. He laid off all these people. And if you dig into the podcast where he's talking about his layoff decision, they ran 1.5 million conversations with AI agents, the voice. and 1.5 million conversations with human customer support agents.
Right.
The net promoter score was higher for AI agents if they didn't know that they were talking to an AI. So meaning us as consumers, we think and like the experience better if we're talking to an AI agent, if we don't know that it's AI. And Mark saw that and was like, well, wait a minute. My customers are happier with the AI agents. It doesn't make sense to keep these people anymore because it's way more efficient. Now, that was the leading headline of like, oh, Mark in Salesforce is laying off all these people. And you might actually miss the signal that's in that. Because in the podcast, he shares, there is a new form of role that's evolving. This new omni-channel supervisor role that we can't find enough of these people. This is the highest demand role in Salesforce now because now we have all of these agents. We need a human to make sure that they're working okay or they're going through case management and they're just so much more productive because the agents are having all the conversations. And there's this human supervisor that's now overseeing, reviewing, approving, right? Flagging anything that can't be handled by an agent. That is a skill set that's a gap. It's the orchestrator role. It's the overseer of work role. It's the delegator role. All of these are functions that the people at Salesforce who have been playing around with that have now elevated into. They just got promoted. They're getting paid more. They're higher in demand than ever before. And I think if we focus on just the layoff story, it's a little bit of like a woe is me. Oh my gosh, I got laid off story. And it's the whole change is happening to me.
Yes.
AI is happening to me. And the point of view that I take is, well, wait a minute. You could learn this. Now more than ever before in 2026, you have access. You can pay $20 a month and tinker around with the latest technology in the world. Go do that.
It's such an interesting, like, full circle evolution. I actually also worked in telco. You worked at TELUS. I worked at Bell for 7 years.
We can still be friends.
Pardon?
We can still be friends.
Yes. And I was actually, my clients were the call centers. And at that time, that was a long time ago now, decade ago or so, but we saw a lot of layoffs still happening in call center and call center roles, but they were going overseas at that time. So I find it really interesting that, yes, Canadian jobs were lost. And that was making all of these headlines because of the cost savings of going to places like Manila and overseas. And now seeing that those roles are being replaced by AI. And I could totally see how the NPS score would be higher when you're getting probably perfect service in terms of the best scripts from the past and using performance data from the best agents and having the AI agents do those things for every single customer. And it's so interesting. So I think to your point, things will always continue to evolve. And before it was, for different reasons.
And by the way, can I piggyback off of that?
Yes, please.
There's a greater opportunity, not even just to like say, hey, let me adapt to the technology and get promoted. There's that conversation of like, okay, I don't want to get laid off, so I'm just going to learn and upskill. There's a second piece of the conversation that's the opportunity in this scarcity of people who know how to use this technology.
Yes.
And now more than ever before, like my calendar's packed with like requests that people are asking me, clients are saying, hey, we have this technology, but our teams don't know how to use it. Can you help us? Can you help us deploy agents? Can you help us do this? And like the value that's created is way more than anything I ever could have possibly made in a full-time job.
Yes.
Right? And you get it. You run your own small business. And it's like now more than ever before, I would proudly say that I'm a small business owner because now I'm so excited by seeing how fast and far I can grow while keeping my business small.
Yes. The overhead that was required in the past, like it's just not the case anymore. Your story of your assistant, you just texting your AI assistant, you would have to hire someone for that previously, right? So
that would have been like $50,000 like if I hired someone 5 years ago, right? At least.
Such an opportunity to do things leaner, smarter, faster. And I'm excited. I'm with you. I'm optimistic as well. I'm excited to see all of the other opportunities that this creates. Because like a long time ago, don't remember the year, but there were door knockers, right? That used to knock on your door and serve as an alarm clock to wake you up. Like we don't need that anymore, right? So things have really evolved. And we're in that time again. So that's so interesting. I'd love to hear more on your work and around Change Fluency. So I have your book. It hooked me right away. This story right out of the gate for anyone that is interested in digging in and learning more about what you do. I'd love to hear more on Change Fluency and what most people get wrong about change. Like, why do we resist it?
Yeah. The two questions there. So I'll try to tackle one at a time. Number one, very simply what we do, because I feel like this is the shorter answer. What do we do at the Change Fluency Co? We help organizations apply innovation. That's it, right? So whatever that innovation is, it's not a technology problem. It's a change problem. But what if we reframe that to a change opportunity? And so that's what we spend most of our time doing. To answer your question, remind me again, the second part of that question was mostly around why do we get stuck in change? Is that right?
Yeah, why do we resist it? Because I catch myself doing the same thing. I'm like, ooh, this is a lot. I'm not sure I know about all this stuff. And yeah, why do we resist it organizationally or personally? I'm curious on your perspective.
Yeah, so we've been working with, over 400 organizations over the past few years. And what we found with our research is that psychologically, our relationship with disruption or change all boils down to two simple things. How do we respond to change and how do we interpret it? So how do we interpret it? Do I see change as a threat or as an opportunity? And how do I respond to change? Am I proactive or am I stuck? So let's say I see change as an opportunity, but I'm stuck, I might find myself in a defender mindset. So there are these four mindsets that start to shape, and you can kind of see the two by two shaping up. If I see change as an opportunity, but I'm stuck, I'm observing, right? I'm seeing what's in the landscape. I'm saying, oh, well, this AI stuff is cool, but let me wait and see until it lands, it gets fully developed, and then I'll start applying it. If I see change as a threat, but I'm frozen and stuck, I become into a bit of a defender mindset, saying, oh, you know what? I built this team, this policy, this process, this technology. I'm going to protect what I've built. This is how we've always done it, so I'm not going to shift anything. If I see change as a threat, but I'm proactive about it, that's where our saboteur mindset kicks in. We start to self-sabotage, say like, oh, well, I tried AI. It hallucinated. I can't trust it, so I should never use it again. And we're self-sabotaging because that one instance is tainting our perception of the change. Last but not least, if I see change as opportunity, but I'm proactive about it, that's where we find ourselves in change fluency. And so we ping pong across all four change mindsets constantly. So at the Change Fluency Co, what we do is we help them identify where your teams are at and then reinforce the habit of change fluency. So what are the three habits that you can practice to reinforce that mindset, to stay change fluent, where you're proactive and seeing change as an opportunity? So that's things like the habit of design thinking, the habit of strategic foresight, the habit of creating trust. So a little plug, hopefully that's okay. But that's a lot about what I obsess. My business partner and I, we obsess over that. So
I love that. I'm curious if someone is listening and they're like, okay, I may hire you for my organization, or they're thinking, well, I want to be proactive and optimistic in my career and the change that's coming. How would change fluency apply to someone in that mindset for what they can do right now to take action, to be that more optimistic, proactive person instead of being afraid of the layoff and trying to hold on to what they built, white knuckling, like, okay, we're going to keep this process going. We're going to keep this, system that I built. What can someone do personally in their career?
Yeah, 3 tactical ways that they can start to apply a change fluent mindset. Number 1 is discover what's possible. That's the practice of strategic foresight. And we do this by zooming out to zoom in, meaning everything you see on your Instagram, every time you're doom scrolling on TikTok, take notice of what signals you're seeing and say, okay, well, what matters out of all of this to me? What's the application to me? And that actually takes deep reflection.
Yes.
The second one is design the future. And that's the practice of design thinking. And that we do this by asking ourselves, okay, how do we shift from what is to what if, right? What is present to what is possible? I'm consistently asking myself that question for like, okay, here's what I have today. What could we do to make this better? And then last but not least, how do we differentiate from the standard? And that's the practice of creating with care. So often I see teams that are disengaged, people who are disengaged, thinking about their career and their next step. They're like, oh, I can't do this anymore.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, how do we start to push ourselves to create with care, to create with love, to pour our soul into the work that we do? Because that's going to be much more fulfilling than being like, oh, I can't do another 5 years of this. And whatever starts to light you up, whatever you find yourself in with your zone of genius, try moving that way as much as possible.
I love that. That's so full circle to what I asked you earlier about what had you go from, let's say, the era of your corporate career to the era where you're the CEO now of your company. And I think that comes down to those 3 steps that you described. And you designed a career that lights you up, that you focus on the area that you love. You said, I'm obsessed with, these elements, and that's what you get to do every single day. So I think that's such an inspiring example of the 3 steps that you just went through in motion. So I love that. Last question for you, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to give advice to your younger self going into your career with everything that you know now, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. I would say reinforce, a lot of the things that brought me joy as both a teenager and a young adult. Do those things and spend most of your time doing it instead of pursuing the corporate ladder, because they actually make you, they actually feed into the creative process. Very tactically, what that looks like for me is writing rap music back when I was a teenager. It included writing, it included reading, it included building Lego sets. You start to put all of those things together, and you start to see exactly how all of that 15 years ago or more now ties into everything that I do as a speaker, an author, right? A podcaster. All of these things were built not because I decided to wake up and do it now. It's because I started way back when. And so it would just be a reinforcement. Don't stop. Double down on that.
I love that. Leaning into your authenticity even more, right? And who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting that you've now become who you were as a child when you were most creative, most free. You didn't have any perception of maybe I should climb the corporate ladder, or what's the next role? What's the next promotion? What's the next company? So I love that. That's a beautiful message. And actually, that's one that I hope my son takes away from all of the work that I do, that he can do what he loves. And that's an option. I didn't really know that earlier on. So that your point really, really hits with me. I didn't know when I was going into my career that I could do what I truly loved. I was going into it thinking, what is the most practical? What's the most safe? And a corporate role felt that way 15 years ago, or now it's 18 years ago. But that's not the case anymore. And that's changing. And that stability is very different now as well. So leaning into your talents, your skills, and who you are, I completely agree that is the key with all the changes that are happening here.
Totally.
Beautiful note to end on. Jay, I'm curious, if people want more, they've loved your perspective, where can they find you?
Yeah, on all the socials at Change Fluency or www.changefluency.com.
Amazing. We will link all of that and a copy to your book as well. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your perspective. I've loved our conversation.
And thanks for having me.
Hey, before you go, if you've enjoyed listening to today's show, I would love your support. Please take a moment to leave a review anywhere where you listen to podcasts. And here's the exciting part. I'm running a special contest and giving away a one-on-one session with yours truly. All you have to do is leave a review, take a screenshot, and send it to me in my DMs. All of my contact info is in the show notes. I appreciate you so much, and I cannot wait to build the career and life that you've been craving together. See you next week.